Cup of tea, or sorry, your cup of tea or coffee or whatever. We'll start in a few minutes. Right, councillors, we will open the Finance and Performance Committee meeting for the 21st of May, and it's a 10:30 meeting because of the workshop. As a matter of business, first up, the workshop for after this meeting on insurance will now take place on Thursday because John Bishop is not well. So that's been deferred. So no workshop after that. So apologies. I have apologies from Deputy Mayor Cashmore for early departure on council business, Councillor Collins' absence, Councillor Sir John Walker for absence, and Independent Murray Statutory Board Chair David Tupper for absence on board business, and I believe Member Honeck as well, who's apparently flying to Rome.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. You should. Did you mention Councillor Sayers? Because
No.
He should have given apologies in for sick.
Oh, sorry, I was reading from down here. Sorry, Councillor Sayers is up there as well. Yep. Yep, Councillor Hoss for lateness. Councillor Hoss is here, and Councillor Young. Early departure for Councillor Young for council business as well. Okay. Moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by myself, or someone's doing whatever.
I'm happy to go downstairs for about an hour half an hour.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll put that in as. Okay. We'll put that in for what we call that temporary absence. Moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by myself. All those in favour? Aye. Declarations. Any declarations, folks? No? Okay. Confirmation of the minutes of the 16th of April. Moved by Councillor Simpson, seconded by myself. All those in favour? Aye. Okay. No petitions, no public input, no local board input, and extraordinary business, none is known. And we are moving straight on to three presentations from the Arafa, some of the Arafa, or three of the Arafa entities. And first up, we asked for Vern to come up, I think. Do you want to just come up and introduce anything, Vern?
To acknowledge the support of Auckland Council and for them to highlight to you some of the fantastic work that they are doing in the region thanks to the support of the Auckland Council. So I think I'll allow them to self-introduce if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vern. Right, so Stardome with David and Carol, or is it? Yes, we're both. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, kia ora and good morning, councillors. My name is David Holdsworth and I'm the Chief Executive of Stardome, the Auckland Observatory and Planetarium. I'd like to thank councillors for inviting us here this morning to update you on what's been happening at Stardome over the last 12 months. First, I'd like to pass on an apology from Richard Sorensen, the chair of our trust board, who is currently overseas and obviously not able to attend today's presentation. I would also, however, like to introduce Carol Gernhofer, who is one of our trustees and is chair of our Audit and Risk Committee.
Welcome.
Stardome is the largest planetarium in New Zealand and a leading provider of astronomical and space-related education, information and material throughout New Zealand. Stardome has been located in One Tree Hill Domain at the foot of Maunga Kea for more than 50 years, and during that time we have proudly shared our love of space with the citizens of Auckland. As many of you will be aware, most major cities around the world, and certainly all of the cities considered to be among the world's most livable cities, have a planetarium as part of the cultural fabric of the city, alongside their museums, art galleries, etc. As I've noted in the past, Auckland is particularly fortunate in having a world-class planetarium located on the slopes of Maunga Kea, one of the most iconic volcanic cones in our city. Stardome's facilities comprise a world-class planetarium where visitors can see shows about space and the universe in an immersive 360-degree dome theatre, astronomical and educational displays and exhibits in the foyer and public areas, a publicly accessible observatory where visitors can actually view planets and constellations, and a world-rated astronomical research facility where our volunteers utilise the telescopes on site to contribute to international studies and observations. Excuse me. We also have a number
David, can we just have Carol turn your speaker off? Off. Yeah, that one. Yep, no, the other button. Yep, all good.
Sorry.
Sorry, we also have a number of spaces that we can hire out for a range of activities such as corporate venue hire, children's birthday parties and even weddings to produce additional revenue to support our core activities. In addition to its astronomical focus, Stardome has introduced a range of non-astronomical shows and diverse programs over the past few years, such as music shows, sci-fi nights and Valentine's nights to broaden our customer base, to attract a wider audience from throughout the Auckland region and to broaden our revenue sources. In the past year, Stardome was closed for 2 weeks to allow an upgrade to our planetarium technology. This project included an upgrade to the operating system that runs our planetarium to the world-leading Evans and Sutherland D6 system, which has significant rendering improvements and more astronomy data to include in our night sky tours. At the same time, we installed 2 new laser projectors which deliver high contrast 4K images on the dome and will also result in significant operational cost savings, as we will not have to continually replace the lamps, which cost over $2,000 each. We're about to have a further technology upgrade with the replacement of our planetarium audio system and the replacement of our uninterrupted power supply system. These upgrades will both improve Stardome's ability to provide planetarium and live music shows, but also will future-proof our system against technology failure for many years to come. We would like to note that none of these technology upgrades would have been possible without the financial support from Auckland Council through Regional Facilities Auckland. So thank you very much for that. In September last year, our historic large Zeiss telescope was decommissioned to allow for a much-needed technology upgrade. When completed, this upgrade will make the telescope better for public viewing and better for our astronomy research, as it will allow our researchers remote access to the instrument. The highlight of a visit to Stardome is our planetarium, where visitors enjoy an out-of-this-world experience. Lying back in the reclining seats and looking up at the 360-degree dome screen, visitors are transported away from Earth to discover the wonders of the universe and exploring the big questions in science. How big is the universe? How did we get here? And of course, the really big one, are we alone? We don't have the answer to that yet. We are currently engaged in a project to introduce more local and more cultural content into our planetarium shows, and Stardome has invested significant funds in 2 homegrown planetarium shows, both of which made their debuts in the past 12 months. The Great Waka, produced in conjunction with Wellington-based Ohu Domes, was added to our Matariki Dawn Show, screening in June and July to public and year-round to education groups. The Stardome produced seasonal series Stories in the Sky also debuted in the past year, and this explores the night sky through ancient Greek and Maori myths and legends. Stardome really shines when there are astronomical events happening, and we were particularly fortunate in the last year with 2 major celestial events occurring, which Stardome used as an opportunity to excite and educate the public of Auckland on astronomy. The January 2019 lunar eclipse saw over 1,800 visitors come through Stardome during one open night, and an overwhelming 37% increase in our website traffic. Mid-2018 saw the close approach of Mars, and while a Martian dust storm obscured some of our viewing, the public were no less engaged, with over 2,500 people visiting us during one night, the night of opposition. The resources and content we produced around these 2 events are still available online, and our analytics show that they are frequented daily, helping to continue to position Stardome as thought leaders and subject experts in the field. Education remains a pillar of Stardome's identity, with over 45,000 school children coming through our educational programs in the past year. Regional amenities funding in support of our low decile and Southern Initiative programs has meant that the Stardome education programs can reach students in some of the lower socio-economic areas of Auckland. It is worth noting that since its inception, 96,000 children from lower decile schools in the Auckland region have visited Stardome, many of whom would otherwise not have been able to make these visits. The number of preschool and Kahangarao students who visited Stardome in the last year was almost 10,000. And the most popular time of year, of course, is our Matariki season, where we have about 12,000 students visit in that period alone. Our school holiday sessions, run by our education team, continues to grow in popularity, with almost 11,000 children enjoying these 4 programs during the course of a year. During the last year, we had around 152,000 visitors at Stardome, and although this was slightly below the number of visitors in the previous year, due mainly to the fact that we were closed for 2 weeks for the technology upgrade previously referred to, this is still a significant number of visitors to such a small facility as Stardome. Our long-standing residency at the Footamonga Kia gives us a unique connection to Maori culture and the local iwi, and we plan to work more closely with the iwi of Auckland in the future to incorporate more Maori and cultural content into our programs. With approximately 95% of our visitors coming from Auckland region, and with over 65% of our visitors being children, Stardome is committed to supporting the objectives of the Auckland Plan. As previously noted, Stardome's lease on our current location expires in 2025, and we are currently working with the Monga team at Auckland Council to extend the term of our lease and to give our organisation certainty about its location into the future. As councillors will be aware, Stardome was one of the 5 Auckland Cultural Heritage Sector institutions which were subject to the review by Stafford strategy last year. And we have been working recently with the other cultural sector institutions and Auckland Council offices to finalise the terms of reference for stage 2 of the proposed council review of the cultural sector, which I believe will be considered by council in the near future. We look forward to working with council and the other cultural sector institutions in the months ahead to see if there's a better way for council to get better value for the significant investment it makes in the cultural sector of Auckland. I should also like to note that we have worked closely with the other main cultural heritage sector organisations of Auckland on the MOA, the Museums of Auckland initiative, which is already leading to greater cooperation across a range of projects between the various cultural sector organisations of Auckland. In conclusion, however, I would like to say that I believe that without regional amenities funding, it is highly likely that Stardome would no longer exist, and it certainly would not be able to provide the citizens of Auckland with the benefits that the facility currently provides. Regional amenities funding has underwritten the sustainability and financial security of Stardome, and it has allowed for the provision of a world-class observatory and planetarium open to the public of Auckland 7 days a week. Carol.
Thank you, David. Just wanted to say thank you on behalf of Stardome, the Auckland Observatory and Planetarium Trust Board, to Regional Amenities Funding Board, Regional Facilities Auckland and Auckland Council for their ongoing support of Stardome. I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognise the Stardome team and volunteers and the fellow Trust Board members for their time. And we look forward to continuing to share our knowledge of space and wonders of the universe with the citizens and children of Auckland in the ways that inspire, challenge and educate. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Kathy?
The first thing is that I'm a member of the Te Punamonga Authority, so I declare an interest in the lease issues. I forgot. My questions will relate to how you work with the other CCOs that we have, like ATEED and RFA. That's one question. And the other is with regard to the low decile schools. How do you get them there? How do you make it so that everybody gets a chance?
Sure. Well, the first one, it'd probably be fair to say that we don't work as closely with ATEED as we would like to. And I think I don't know whether it's our fault or ATEED's fault or whatever, but I think there's a slightly different focus. But that is now coming more into focus as a result of the cultural sector review. So I think in the future there will be a much greater interaction with ATEED. And the second question,
Auckland?
Sorry?
Regional Facilities Auckland?
Yes. We work very closely with Regional Facilities Auckland. Yeah, I did refer to them in my presentation. We have a very close relationship with Regional Facilities Auckland. We meet them on a regular basis, and they do give us very good support. As I said, that the capital funding projects that we had wouldn't have taken place if we hadn't have got the support of Regional Facilities Auckland, and which was funds that came through the Auckland Long-Term Plan. So the second question, we make our programs available to all the low decile schools of Auckland. We don't try and pick and choose. We can't say which ones come. We leave it up to them to take advantage of the programs that we have on offer. But they are available to all low decile schools in Auckland.
Historically, we've also applied for transport funding for lower decile schools to get there, because the biggest cost on the school trips is actually getting there for them and getting enough adults per child on the bus, etc. as well. So we've looked at other ways to make it more accessible too.
Third question was, what did you do on Valentine's night?
Well, it's our most profitable night of the year, to be honest. We have we had 5 fully sold out sessions from about 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night. We charge $150 a couple, which is stunningly good, and we give them a little pack with a few goodies in it, including a bottle of champagne and a couple of glasses. And we put on a planetarium show which focuses on the romantic aspects of space and planets and so on, and stories, and it's continued to grow in popularity. So if anybody feels inclined to for a romantic night,
It's a half price if you come along by yourself.
You just got to buy one ticket.
I think we'd probably charge double if you're so sad that you have to come along on your own.
Do you do reruns of, what was it, George Clooney and Sandra Bullock?
We do reruns of old movies. Yeah, I'm not sure about George Clooney, but we do have sci-fi nights once a month where we get old movies. They're sometimes hard to get because the companies that own them are not too keen to give them up. But we do have old sci-fi nights, old movie sci-fi nights.
You've also worked with the Arts Festival as well.
Yeah. I didn't mention that, but we for the first time this year we worked with the Auckland Arts Festival, and we had 4 nights where we had a musician playing live music in the planetarium, and we were one of the two, we were told by the Arts Festival that we're one of the 2 events that were fully sold out through the course of the Arts Festival. So it's something we want to work on in the future and improving, because live music is a great opportunity for us to have the live music with the planetarium, with images on the dome and so on. So, yeah.
Good. Any further questions, no? Observations? No? Well, thank you very much, and we
Thank
really
you very
like
much for your time.
Valentine's story.
We'll turn this off.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the 14th of February next year.
So when are these romantic nights, bro?
14th of February is Valentine's night. Well,
Planetarium shows on my part.
we
Oh,
I just heard the dulcet tones of John Tommyhead. Careful what you...
I think he's singled.
we do sometimes actually have special romantic evenings, and we've had a number of people who've proposed to their partners under the stars in the planetarium. So we can put on a special show if you're feeling that way inclined. So.
But I'll rescue the situation. I think it could be you don't know who to take. That would be what it is. That's right. That's right.
That's what I really think.
Yeah. Right. We now have Callum and Roy from the Coast Guard Northern Region. Welcome. Yep. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Council.
Oh, just press the button. Yep. That's it.
On behalf of Coast Guard Northern Region, thank you very much for your invitation to attend this morning's committee session. I'm joined by Mr. Roy Savage, who's a board member, and I have no romantic involvement with Roy, just to be clear. Thank you. Together we look forward to updating you on Coast Guard Northern Region's performance over the last 12 months and to answer any questions you've got. So I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to Auckland Council for your ongoing support. The financial support given to CNR through the AREFA mechanism and Auckland Council contributes to about 13% of our annual expenses base. It's highly valued, it's never taken for granted. It contributes to salary costs for operations staff, to the meeting the costs of our Auckland units, and supports regional community and education initiatives. In addition to the AREFA grant, I would also like to acknowledge the active support of Council and councillors in many other ways through the course of the year. I see firsthand your support of our 13 Northern Region units, and I'm grateful to councillors for what you do supporting our volunteers to resolve local issues and to drum up local support. It's very, very much appreciated. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to Council for your financial support with the granting of $2 million towards the remediation of the Marine Rescue Centre. That project is progressing through the design process, not quite as fast as we would like, but it is progressing. It is volunteer powered in the main, that project. And the Rescue Centre, as you know, was purpose-built for not only our organisation, but several other resident organisations there. And while it continues to be our preferred location, it absolutely needs investment, and I'm grateful to you for backing that. The role of Coast Guard Northern Region, as I think you know, is to make sure that everybody returns home safely from their time on the water. More proactively and more positively, I think it's to enable our region's residents to make the most of our amazing coastline and marine environment. And we do so by providing 365-day-a-year rescue services, by owning and operating a comprehensive VHF communications network across the Auckland and Northland and Waikato regions, by providing mariners with information and services to keep them out of hot water, hopefully in the first place, and by educating people in our communities so that they can make the most of our amazing marine environment. In the last 12 months, the last 12 months has been a highly rewarding and challenging period for us. But I believe we're delivering on a mission and executing on our strategy. In the period 2016 to 2018, we've seen the support we provide to boaties growing, which is reversing a trend over the previous 3 years. In the last full financial year, CNR managed about 114,000 trip reports for boaties going out on the water. That's an increase of about 11,000 on the previous year. And we believe there is greater activity on the harbour. As you guys know, I think you own Westhaven Marina, and you're probably aware that Westhaven Marina is pretty much full, as are most of the other marinas in our region. And we're seeing a lot of activity on boat ramps as well. The result of this is increased tasking for Coast Guard, and last year we responded to more than 2,100 calls for assistance. We brought more than 5,400 boaties home to safety one way or the other, and of those, about 260 events were genuinely life-threatening. The types of events that we respond to vary very greatly across the region, and our volunteers are trained for all sorts of eventualities. Earlier this month, we were proud to be acknowledged at the NZ SAR Awards in Wellington for one typical kind of event. I won't go into too many of the details. I'll spare the person the embarrassment, but it's fair to say last year actually, we found ourselves in a situation where we were responding to an event where a boat owner was engulfed in a fireball on his yacht when he decided to do cleaning and electrical work at the same time, which was a mistake. The crews of 2 Auckland Coast Guard rescue vessels responded. We found this man very, very badly burnt in the remnants of his yacht, in the shower, suffering from hypothermia as well as severe burns. But thankfully, we were able to respond, to administer pain relief and first aid, and transfer him ashore to hospital. This was quite a complex scenario, and it's pretty typical, to be honest. We undertook this event at night, responding to a very badly damaged vessel with potential hazards, a patient with complex needs, and as they all conducted in the dark. Many of you will know that we operate an air patrol based out of Ardmore. It's one of 2 air patrols that Coast Guard Northern Region operates. And in March this year, we had an event that really typifies the difference it can make. While fishing off Ariwa, 3 friends in a boat experienced had the experience rather of having their boat sink on them. It sank inside 30 seconds. They managed to dash off a very quick mayday, and thankfully we were able to pick it up. Coast Guard's Auckland Air Patrol was in the vicinity, but unfortunately they gave us a poor position on where they were. We were led to believe they were within 500 metres of the beach at Ariwa. And once we had searched that location and discovered that wasn't where they were, we extended our search perimeter, if you like, and we found them 3 to 4 kilometres offshore. I often think about that. They had 30 seconds before their boat went down. They found themselves in the water, unable to see land at that point. And I can only imagine the relief that they must have experienced once the Coast Guard Air Patrol was over the top of them, circling them and getting a rescue vessel to their assistance. As you're aware, every year we deliver excuse me, a broad range of community engagement and education activities to raise awareness of water safety and boating messages. In the current year, we've delivered education to in excess of 1,600 students. We've also delivered 7 bar safety courses across the region, and we've attended events such as Pacific in the Park, Seaport, to name just a couple. Again, this year we've also undertaken our Old for New event that was started by Coast Guard Northern Region, but has now spread nationally. Each year we're amazed by the response we get. This year we've traded in excess of 3,400 life jackets nationwide. On the 10th of May, Maritime New Zealand published the results of their No Excuses campaign, which is about enforcing and understanding life jacket wearing in or across New Zealand. They report that 95% of boaties surveyed had sufficient life jackets on board, and 83% of them were wearing them when required. And it's certainly been my observation as I go about my business now on the Hauraki Gulf that more often than not we see people wearing life jackets. So we do believe the message is getting through, but it's a message we've got to continue to spread. CNR is powered by approximately 1,000 volunteers. They're highly trained, well equipped to respond to the kinds of events that I've just been talking to you about. To achieve competence for volunteers and to stay competent, our volunteers typically put in about 15 hours a month in discretionary effort. That's training, operations, or running their volunteer units. In the main, Aucklanders are served well by Coast Guard. We have, as I said earlier, 13 units on the west and east coasts of this great city. However, there are outlying rural areas, such as Kaipara and Barrier, for example, where we do experience the challenges that many other voluntary organisations experience in terms of recruiting and retaining volunteers. This is a problem that we understand. We have a range of solutions for and are working very hard to address. We're doing so by improving our recruitment approaches, by increasing investment in training, by using technology to give volunteers, or to take the burden of admin off volunteers and give them better decision-making tools. An example of this would be the use of the Active 911 app that we are now encouraging across the region. It allows volunteers to tell us when they are responding to an event and enables them to understand in real time who is responding so that they can make well-informed decisions about whether they need to respond individually. This year we have also recruited an additional 2 staff into Coast Guard Northern Region to increase support to our units and to improve coordination of our operations function. I'm grateful to RAFA and to Auckland Council for giving us a financial contribution to this when we requested it. This week our Coast Guard crew are packing up after another successful and enjoyable Hutch Wilco boat show up at the showgrounds. This is a huge annual event for us when we get to engage with thousands of boaties, if you like. This year's boat show, I'm pleased to tell you that Coast Guard was awarded an Innovation Award for our Coast Guard app that we launched last year. The app is an innovation designed to not only give people the information about weather and tide and such like, but also to provide them with an alternative, convenient way to tell us what they're planning to do on the water if they don't want to use the VHF or the telephone. And with the smartphone technology, we can also, of course, Big Brother-like, monitor their progress if they allow us to do so. And that gives us regular location information, and we can also remind them through the app to tell us when they're safely back alongside. The app is just one of many technology projects we've delivered in the last year to improve the service that we provide to Aucklanders. This month we will complete a $1.5 million investment in our VHF communications system that will greatly improve the quality, coverage and resilience of the system. We've done so in partnership with Cordia, and in the process we've put in place a service level, planned maintenance and systems monitoring on our network, which means that our systems will be better and have less downtime. It also means that we now can reduce our reliance on hardware in the rescue centre, which means that if we need to evacuate the rescue centre and operate from another location, we can now do so safely and effectively. And finally, I will just quickly touch on our financial position. As you've heard, we're investing in our people and in necessary technology. As a result of that, our asset base, plants and equipment, if you like, is increasing. This, combined with recent changes to accounting rules, means that the shape of Coast Guard's financials are changing, I guess in the way that many not-for-profit financials are changing. Today, we need to increase our revenue to service our rapidly growing depreciation, where depreciation was less of an issue for not-for-profit organisations in the past. And this is certainly presenting us with challenges, not only in the way we manage our organisation, but also the way we tell our story about our financials. For the year ending June last year, CNR posted a consolidated surplus of $164,000 against revenue of about $5.5 million. We continue to work smartly to grow and diversify our revenue, and membership remains our single largest income source at about 40% of our income, as well as strengthening our fundraising capability and seeking to establish long-term funding arrangements with the likes of Trust Waikato, Foundation North, etc. I will conclude by simply saying thank you to Council for your ongoing support, not just financially, but by all the other means that I've mentioned, and to be ready to answer any questions.
Roy, is there anything you wish to say on behalf of the board?
I'd certainly like to add my thanks to Auckland Council and the RAFA for supporting Coast Guard for many years. And as Callum said, there's been some quite challenging technology projects that have added to the services that we've rolled out, and the support's gratefully acknowledged. So that's it from me. Any questions, so welcome to answer.
Okay. We'll go for Councillor Walker first.
Commendations first on the fantastic work that you do, and thank you for the person or the rescue off Ariwa, which is in our ward, myself and Councillor Watson. So got a question. So you mentioned that obviously the marinas are full, so boating activity is up, boat launching and the like. Have you got any data on the increase in activity, which I'm assuming would correlate with the need for your service?
It's hard to get accurate data. We know, for example, that across New Zealand there are about 600,000 people who say they have boats, but they're of all different shapes and sizes, right? From stand-up paddleboards through to, to mega launches. The most accurate thing that we can do to give us a sense of activity is to look at that trip reporting information that we actively manage, because that is a very effective measure of activity on the harbour. I can't give you a population number, for example, in terms of the number of Aucklanders that are boating at the moment. There was a Becca study done a number of years back that some of you may be aware of.
So when are you going to have some trends and some data on that? Because it's not been going long, correct? This is the trip data?
No, the trip data has been going for a long time. We are very confident in our trip reporting.
I'm getting mixed up with the app that you've mentioned.
Yes, sorry, the app has been going only since July last year. We've got about 13,000 downloads on that, and about 15% of the trip reports that we now receive are done through the app, which is great news for us because it really adds a level of value in terms of being able to send a text to you or pursue you if you haven't closed your report, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's got to be one of the best reports back to council I think I've ever heard, so congratulations on that. My question is quite a simple one, is how do you let your people know that we fund you, that Auckland Council is one of the funders of the wonderful work that you do?
We, first of all, have your branding on our website. It's in our annual report, and we are out and proud about the support that you provide us.
Councillor Watson.
Thanks, and thank you for your heartfelt expressions of gratitude too. It's not that often that we in here hear people speak so strongly in terms of being grateful for what they receive from council. So thank you for that. My question goes to one of those statistics you you quoted in respect of the life-threatening events, so over 260. Are you finding with the huge growth in population and certainly the massive increase in what I perceive as a massive increase in the number of boats utilising boat launching areas? So, for instance, up in Gulf Harbour, Hammerhead, absolutely chock-a-block. Is there a degree of inexperience or stupidity or accompanying that increase, or are we finding, the figures staying, relatively static?
One has to be careful about generalising about the people that we seek to help. Somebody said to me that the events at Ariwa were caused by a freak wave. The boat would have had a freeboard of about this much. It was maybe, 4 or 5 metres long. It had 3 grown adults in it. There's lots of work to be done on education.
Councillor Darby.
Thanks, gentlemen. Yeah, good presentation. I appreciate it. And just following up on Councillor Simpson's query. So what do Hutch Wilco, the Lottery Grants Board, and Lion Foundation, Pub Charity, what do they contribute in terms of quantums, just against ours?
Absolutely, right. So Auckland Council plus Northland and Waikato Council contribute about 13 to 14% of our expenses, and the bulk of that is Auckland Council, for the avoidance of any doubt. Central government to Coast Guard Northern Region, and this varies with the other regions. So the other regions of Coast Guard have a higher dependence upon central government than CNR does. Central government provides about 10 to 11% of funding. We are the fortunate beneficiaries of a 2-year partnership with Foundation North. Foundation North this year have increased their funding per annum to Coast Guard Northern Region to $540,000 from $500,000, and that is invaluable for our capital funds to maintain and replace our rescue vessels. Lotteries Grant Board typically contribute between $150,000 and perhaps $400,000 a year to Coast Guard Northern Region, and that varies depending on the types of projects that we're asking for. Hutch Wilco are an amazing partner. They've been with us for a very, very long time. They provide us $20,000 a year in-kind support, so life jackets that we then use at the likes of the boat show for promotions, and they are also one of the big powers behind the Old for New Life Jacket campaign across the country. So we have a great relationship with them.
Thank you. And so just given there's a range of quantums there and generous organisations they are, I'm looking at your website. It's something I have raised before. I just can't see the acknowledgement of Auckland Council on your website. I mean, that's a portal where a lot of your members and maybe users who aren't members would go to inquire. And Vern, really, it's probably something for you, Vern. I always thought that there needed to be, Chair, an acknowledgement. Am I missing it? Is it an oversight? Because I did raise it a year ago, and I think a year ago prior. Is it there, but I can't see it, or is it something to attend to?
I think, as I said, it's not. We can do better on the website. You're right. We have the Auckland Council brand there. I presume you're looking at the right website, the Coast Guard Northern Region website, as opposed to the Coast Guard New Zealand website.
Coast Guard Auckland. I'm on the Coast Guard Auckland.
That's not the correct website. That's the Coast Guard unit in Auckland at the rescue centre. I'm representing Coast Guard Northern Region.
And that is different again. Okay.
I know, and regrettably, Coast Guard Northern Region is one of 68 Coast Guard entities in New Zealand. So we are a federated model. A number of them have websites. CNR has the Auckland brand on its website. and has your brand in our annual report, a copy of which I have with me here. And as I said to, I think it was Councillor Simpson, I am very vocal about the support you provide.
I stand corrected and apologise. Yes, you have got the Auckland brand there along with a number of others, and thank you. And so the app, the Coast Guard app, just to get that right,
yes,
that's not your app, that's the national app?
It's a national app, provides a national service. We're taking trip reports from the South Island, but it was created by my team and I.
Okay, and so that's I just looked, that's a paid app. I wasn't aware of it.
It's $3.49, Mr. Darby.
Yeah, and just in terms of cost recovery, you know, having been a boatie and seen the number of, you know, towbacks to base because people run out of fuel or whatever reason it is, you know, things that as a boatie you should be on top of, and you guys deal with it because the wind's blowing the wrong way and all those arguments. So I like the ambulance service, and it's a donation request, really. Do you make requests of people who aren't members and recover costs there?
Yes, so there are a couple of things to understand. First of all, we're a search and rescue organisation. So in the event that you are in a life-threatening position, such as either of the two examples I've given this morning, there's no invoice given to you as you climb in the ambulance. It's free, all right? And that's provided to you. That cost is covered by either police or by the Rescue Coordination Centre or ambulance. For non-life-threatening events, if you are a member, the cost of recovery is free. If you are not a member and you choose to go out and take that risk and you find yourself with a flat battery, then Coast Guard will charge you $280 an hour by way of cost recovery for that. And we have about an 80% cost recovery success rate.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Councillor Casey and then Councillor Cashmore.
Thanks very much, Callum and Roy. I'd like to echo Councillor Simpson's praise of this presentation. Done in plain English without the need for visual aids is very rare at this council, so congratulations. My question relates to the Marine Rescue Centre and its timeline, and also the America's Cup, which is going to be a big year for you, and when we can expect you to come, or through Arafa, looking for more money to service America's Cup, and how's the planning going for that?
I like to pride myself on always delivering in plain Scottish, Councillor Casey. So in terms of the Rescue Centre project, that's a project that is run by the trust that oversees the Rescue Centre, not by CNR or Surf Life Saving here today. That's being managed by the trust. They are on a timeline to have that completed realistically in about 18 months' time. They are currently working through the detailed design process with RGT Pacific, who are the architects doing that. There is certainly the need to increase funding further to support that, but the council's contribution of $2 million really gives them a foundational position from which to build that funding ask, if you like. In terms of the America's Cup, there's two things to say. The first one is that Coast Guard is working with Emirates Team New Zealand and has been in receipt of a promise, a partnership, if you like, from Lotteries Grant Board for $10 million for the purchase of 26 chase/rescue boats that will be used during the AC-36 campaign, and then will be repurposed and used by Coast Guard units around the country. Of course, the America's Cup is going to be a big thing going off here in 2021. Coast Guard Northern Region will get involved on the periphery of the operation, if you like, but we have no requested a role to play in the America's Cup organisation or execution.
Councillor Cashmore.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well done, gentlemen. My question is to you about your finances. So you alluded to the fact that there's going to be some shortfall during the thing, you're going to have to fund depreciation more thoroughly going forward. Are you able to account with that in the existing structures, or will you be looking for more money from your funders?
We aim to account for that ourselves. I think the fact of the matter is that we are under a fair bit of pressure, particularly in terms of supporting our volunteers and in dealing with both a backlog of technology that needs upgraded and the expectations of yourself and ourselves in terms of making sure that we have the right technology to provide the right services to people. So we do not expect to stop our technology investment. At the board meeting that Roy and I attended last night, we talked about the fact that we may have to carefully manage that depreciation bow wave that we're now experiencing. 5 years ago, CNR was managing depreciation of about $128,000 a year. That is now more likely to be $600,000 this year, which means that our net profit has to be that or better in order to manage our accounting profit. We are working very closely with Coast Guard New Zealand to engage in conversation with government about perhaps simplifying the structure of our organisation and gaining additional funding from them.
Perhaps, Councillor Cashmore, if I can add to that, just to give some colour around the sort of projects that the project costs we're incurring that result in these the escalation of depreciation over time. So a lot of it is around the computer systems and software that are needed to ensure health and safety standards meet expectations and requirements going forward. Also partly to do with our training and education. As we're trying to include more people in Coast Guard and get a more diverse base coming through, the way they learn has changed. So instead of a classroom situation with a lecture and a test afterwards, it's more online, it's more computer driven. So the depreciation, it's not just boats, motors, aircraft, that sort of thing. It's systems, it's a new radio rollout, it's the development in the app. So part of the challenge is just the timing of that depreciation versus the life of the expense incurred, and it's something we're very focused on.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, thank you for your presentation. I just want to pick up on your comments about the need for more education. Is that something that you'll be looking to undertake outside of your membership, or are you advocating to others to undertake that education?
Water safety education in Auckland is a pretty, I was going to say crowded market in a sense. There are many different organisations doing that. Coast Guard Northern Region is responsible for, if you like, the frontline delivery of search and rescue services. We are supported by Coast Guard Boating Education as well, who are based at the West Haven Marina. So collectively, Coast Guard is delivering a lot of specifically boating safety events and community engagement. This year we went to Pacific in the Park for the first time and have gone to seaports for, I think, the second time this year. So we are increasing our community engagement. We have been in receipt of additional funding from Foundation North to work on our diversity and community engagement strategy, because I believe that Foundation North do a good job of that and that we can learn from them, and they've been generous enough to give us funding towards helping that. In addition to that, this year we have continued and we plan to grow our schools programme. For example, during, I think it was the summer term, Auckland Grammar had kids come through for 2 weeks of marine education as part of an NCA qualification, and we're looking to see if we can expand that. But that is dependent upon when the schools want to be involved with that kind of stuff. The Old for New campaign is huge, not only in terms of trading life jackets, but the but the educational and engagement part of that as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers it. Are you saying that it's a particular group that are drowning?
No, it's not a particular group that are drowning. I can say absolutely that Maori, Pacifica and Asian communities drown at a higher pro rata percentage than people like myself.
Right. Callum, we were talking earlier about the boat at Titirangi, the new boat which will get across the bar. What are the abilities of Raglan or Kaipara or Waiuku with regards getting boats across the bar? Are they all capable of that, or is only Titirangi? I mean, Councillor Cashmore would be interested in this, and Councillor Holson.
Manukau Harbour is a really busy harbour, as you know. We've got 3 Coast Guard units on the Manukau, at Waiuku, Papakura and Titirangi. Both the Waiuku and the Papakura rescue teams are very well equipped with bar-capable rescue boats. The Titirangi one hasn't been so well equipped since it went under the French Bay Yacht Club, but the one that we're purchasing now will be bar-capable. All of the units at Raglan and Kaipara are bar-capable.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, thank you. I think very good presentation. Yep. We don't have the funds in Titirangi, that's the problem. So thank you, gentlemen, that was really good, very good presentation, and yeah, we will do a vote of thanks at the end after we have Surf Life Saving. So thank you, Roy, thank you, Callum. Right, Matthew. Welcome, Matthew.
Good morning, councillors. Just before we kick off formally, I might correct the record. Matthew Williams, Chief Executive, Surf Life Saving Northern Region, unless you all know something I don't know at this stage.
Not New Zealand. Yeah.
Denied.
Yep.
Denied. Also, apologies from our chair, Denise Boviard. She enjoys coming along to these engagements, but is currently out of town and we couldn't find a board replacement. So she regrets she's here and I regret the increased word count. The history of surf lifesaving in Auckland region is well understood. Many of the councillors here today have had a direct engagement through our clubs, through our regional events, or through attending and visiting our beaches. The past year has once again been a successful one for Surf Lifesaving Northern Region, especially in the Auckland area. Data collected through the 2018 Coastal Research Analysis, led by our national body SLSNZ, has provided key information to Surf Lifesaving Northern Region about the times and dates members of the public are accessing our patrolled beaches in Auckland. Auckland member clubs were supported to use this data to extend and add to their current patrol times and dates to ensure Surf Lifesaving was working to match patrol coverage to beach usage within reason. This change has had a significant impact on the injury toll in the first year. Provisional figures from the season ended late April 2019 has shown that this increase in patrolling hours by approximately 15% has reduced the total number of significant rescues, where if we hadn't assisted someone may have drowned or died, down to 177 people, down from last year's average of 253 people and a 23% decrease on the 10-year average for Auckland. In summation, despite being one of the busiest summers on Auckland beaches, Auckland lifeguards were able to have a significant impact on the drowning and injury toll by increasing the voluntary and paid patrol times and hours. This year also saw the successful implementation of the St. John MDT tasking unit. Recent years have seen frustrations caused by emergency services not tasking surf lifesaving to appropriate incidents at appropriate times. Their operations have simply not accounted for surf lifesaving formally. What this has meant is that outside of patrol hours, if incidents are occurring at times St. John staff have responded through the 111 line to a drowning, they don't have a practical ability to respond to, and surf lifesaving have only been reflex tasked at a later stage, often at such a late stage that we are not able to successfully respond to the victim. To address this, Surf Lifesaving Northern Region and Coast Guard Northern Region partnered with St. John to install their MDT unit in the Coast Guard Operations Centre in the Marine Rescue Centre. This has been an immediate success, with Surf Life Saving Northern Region responding to an additional 64 jobs where we have had greater impact to avoid serious injury and save a life. It would also be interesting to note for Council that Aucklanders are fast becoming better educated and more beach safe. Although the population's growing and using the beach in different ways, we're seeing far more incident caused by uneducated beachgoers or people not assessing the risk. And what we're now faced with in Auckland, which is slightly more complicated, is we have a very wide range of drowning incidents with a slim frequency in that. So it's sort of 20 ways people are getting in trouble with only one of two people in those 20 categories, which is more complex to address than 100 people getting in trouble in a certain way. Continuing the theme of partnership, Auckland Council and Surf Life Saving Northern Region continue to work closely together through the joint partnership with Auckland District Health Board, the Safe Swim platform. This resource continues to be upgraded to better serve Auckland and now contains key safety information for beaches and live hazard updates to ensure it is a relevant one-stop shop for coastal recreation information. Additionally, Safe Swim and water quality education now forms part of all of our beach education and junior surf curriculum taught in primary schools around Auckland and to our youth membership known as Nippers or Cadets. It is exciting to note that Safe Swim funding has supported Surf Life Saving Northern Region in working with Plymouth University on a first-of-its-kind RIP modelling and forecast tool that will provide real-time and predictive RIP and surf conditions forecasting to Auckland beachgoers, further strengthening the Safe Swim platform and securing it as a world-class coastal and beach information tool, supporting resilient communities in Auckland and greatly assisting Surf Life Saving Northern Region in delivering the education pillar of our drowning prevention strategy. Finally, significant capital investment projects under the radio network upgrade. In the first year ahead of schedule, we've completed our entire region's radio digital network upgrade, and we came in 20% below budget, and we had our first season using that new digital network, and it's been performing well in that space. None of this great work could be achieved without the continued support of Auckland Council. Through the annual AREFA grant and the support of our Surf 1020 capital redevelopments, Auckland Council is the largest single funder of surf lifesaving services nationally, coming in ahead of significant community funders such as NZLGB. That contribution is appreciated and ensures that Auckland has a world-class life-saving service as we work to make some of the most dangerous and populated beaches in the country safe and enjoyable to recreate at for anyone. Surf Life Saving Northern Region is looking to continue its history of success, though it is less clear and understood what the future of surf life-saving delivery will look like in Auckland over the next 20 years. Council and Surf Life Saving Northern Region must continue to work together to agree what will be required to respond to a changing, more complex community and volunteer network. Population growth, urban sprawl, societal change, a dynamic demographic mix and heightened mobility will continue to increase and vary the demands on our services in the Auckland area. In the last 4 years, Surf Life Saving Northern Region has taken early steps to be future focused, creating new means to address funding requirements, providing services at new locations where there is demonstrable demand, increasing patrol times to ensure the public has supervised access to the beach at peak times, critically reviewing historical arrangements, including patrol locations, senior lifeguards regularly working closely with the wider emergency services framework, highly trained senior lifeguards operating across the Auckland area in support of major incidents, supporting volunteers and ensuring appropriate health and safety protocols are observed, creating strategic and future-focused roles at staff level with a mandate to build relationships with central government and other key external stakeholders, establishing a separate Lifesavers Foundation that is looking globally for fundraising, altruism and philanthropy best practice with a view to shifting the funding burden from our surf club members and diversifying revenue streams wider than local government, coordinating a long-term plan for the provision of buildings and other major infrastructure, conducting a comprehensive beach safety risk assessment of all Auckland region to ensure an evidence-based approach is delivered for our services. Despite these strategic initiatives, to ensure we are well placed to respond to future challenges, our strategic plan contemplates some key challenges that I'd like to share with Council. The nature of our work and the structure of our organisation brings with it significant legacy challenges, which the organisation has been working to address. These challenges are principally inherited and endemic within the sector as a whole, many of which have burdened the organisation for decades, our legacy challenges. Principle of which is that surf lifesaving is largely in the commons. Everyone uses our service, everyone believes they have a right to the service, but no one is responsible for supporting or providing the service, and we can't attract revenue from that service. In New Zealand, no one authority is responsible for the funding, support, or success of our organisation, and the legislation surrounding coastal management and the use of the beaches is largely silent around how local authorities or central government should provide for us. This has resulted in surf lifesaving being burdened with some antiquated systems, which at times frustrates all levels. We're well supported in the funding of our core services, but the organisation has not been successful in supporting the ancillary support systems from membership organisation, which would make us truly thrive. Surf Lifesaving is also adapting to deal with the changing volunteer landscape. SLS&I has achieved its current status largely due to strong philanthropic support and the huge amounts of volunteer time and effort that have been committed to making sure this organisation remains successful. And it would be a fair representation to say we largely got where we are as an organisation based on our volunteers' strength and tenacity alone, sheer force of will, and key volunteers putting in a huge amount of effort. The present-day volunteer landscape no longer supports volunteers being able to give their time so freely, and what was the expected norm for volunteer commitment is no longer feasible, yet alone attractive. There's also far more rigmarole, process and structure around volunteering and providing the equivalent services of the past. Though these processes and functions are for good cause, it has had the ancillary impact of adding an increasing amount of workload, planning and cost to deliver similar levels of service. This additional burden has made it increasingly harder to find people who can support volunteer commitments in the current format and severely limits our volunteer profile and future performance, which leaves us with the dual challenges of growing the delivery of volunteer services at times when volunteers have less time and resource. Life-saving facilities, rescue equipment and human resources. While our core operations have been adequately funded over time, support for capital investment has been ad hoc and at times less than what was forecast or needed. In regards to our 10 surf lifesaving facilities across Auckland, which has Cornerstone Council funding support, this has meant that many of them are currently in urgent need of repair and rebuild at the same time. While this shows incredibly poor previous planning on the part of the organisation, it is now firmly this generation's responsibility to respond to the crisis. The average age of these facilities is 32 years old, and many of them are now no longer fit for purpose, let alone able to support the future needs of our growing member clubs. Surf 1020, the program and governance group set up to address this problem, has been slow to progress outcomes. Without criticism, it has taken approximately twice as long as anticipated to reach each milestone, and this is despite significant and growing support and resource from Auckland Council. To rebuild these buildings in such an escalated construction market in such a challenging environment is quickly debilitating an already laboured workforce. Project complexities and standard consenting issues abound, and current funding forecasts do not match the project expenditure, with many funders already supporting surf lifesaving or the clubs in other capacities. It is frustrating to note that progress has been so slow, despite a concerted effort by a talented array of volunteers, and these frustrations are now palpable within the movement. Nevertheless, we have to be successful in this endeavour, and as we know how critical the program is to the movement. It is hoped that the future prospect of central government funding will arrive in a timely enough manner to support the bulk of these developments. Whether as a result of the changing volunteer landscape or current culture and practices, we also have a membership deficiency in comparatively in members aged 23 to 41 across the region, and somewhat adversarial leadership within some of our member organisations. Necessary change, which must come, is seen as threatening or destructive by these entities, and we must do more to move forward as one organisation in future years. Additional to the above, our participation or membership model is no longer deemed fit for purpose and will need to be reviewed to support the future needs of Auckland. The Waiheke local boarding community has a desire to partner with Surf Lifesaving and form part of the movement, teaching their youth valuable skills, not desiring to put up flags on the beach, but they want to make sure that their community can respond to a rescue successfully. It's a reasonable ask and a sensible way to grow our service delivery. However, our current constitution and membership model allows no way for existing community groups who want to work with us to do this easily and help us achieve our mission and vision. This is not acceptable and needs to be remedied. These legacy challenges have largely been business as usual items for surf lifesaving in the past decade and would be symptomatic to many organisations of our kind throughout New Zealand. However, it is fair to say in the past we have largely got by and succeeded in spite of being burdened by these challenges. However, in the face of future challenges, it is clear that we must conclusively address these matters if we are able to perform in our predicted future environment. In concert with the listed legacy challenges, Surf Lifesaving Northern Region's current strategic plan has anticipated additional independent challenges we will need to address in order to achieve our vision and mission in the future. Front and centre in Auckland is population growth and sprawl. The population growth continues. More people continue to come to the city and use the beaches, and these additional beach users are using the beach in new and varying ways. That's to say, anecdotally, it's not just 100 new people on the beach, it's 100 new people at new times doing completely different things to what they had done in the past, all of which demands a more complex and varied response from our volunteers. This in turn means the basket of skills lifeguards require is continuing to grow more and become more in-depth and multifarious at the same time. Amplifying this population growth in coastal recreation is occurring in new coastal areas in Auckland that do not currently have access to surf lifesaving services. Where once there was one house, now there may be hundreds or thousands. This is a significant strategic challenge as it requires the organisation to engage early with council and communities to ensure we are working in partnership delivering new services where they are needed and that current services are still relevant in light of population change and demand. Ultimately, surf lifesaving must work towards a model that we respond to the planning needs of current and burgeoning settlements and not drownings or injury which occur further down the timeline. Examples of this are seen at Wenderholm, Parkery, Goat Island, TRI and neighbouring Black Swamps. Additionally, conversations may require surf lifesaving to reconfigure its service delivery in the future, which is difficult when the service is driven by an affiliation to the current coastline where the surf club has historically been based. These population changes will almost certainly require surf lifesaving to review its systems, processes and engagement models to ensure we are attracting and developing membership in these new areas, and these changes will need to be widely consulted with our current membership and external stakeholders.
Is there much more? Because we want to allow for questions, that's all.
I think before we finish, it would also be right to thank the Arefa board for their leadership in this space, and especially Vern Walsh. Really strong support from that board and leadership from Vern. It's a difficult time difficult job at times, balancing the needs of two very vocal stakeholders. So we'd like to thank them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Councillor Walker.
A couple of questions. The last one, just picking up on the point that you've made around these distant locations. I'm referring to particularly Parkery, Black Swamp, Tiara. My son surfs there, for example, and he's concerned sometimes about the absence. So how can you resource that?
Look, that's a great question. We'll talk about Parkery to start with. Parkery Beach has a life-saving service there because Red Beach Surf Lifesaving Club set one up there 6 years ago. Yeah. That involves volunteers driving every weekend from Red Beach, an hour and a half up the coast to set up patrol by 10 o'clock, providing the patrol and driving an hour and a half back. It's a model that becomes less and less valuable over time. And the longer they're there, the more their costs increase as they have more capital infrastructure, patrol towers. It needs to be planned at the outset. And what we've proposed is that we've now completed a fulsome report on Auckland coastal recreation use, and it's showing where people are likely to use the beaches in the future and where they're using it now. And we're going to use that to work through with our membership and then Auckland Council to decide where the services may be needed and how we're actually going to resource those memberships. And the added challenge, as I alluded to, was that many of these clubs, such as Maringi Bay, have an affiliation to their coastline. They may have a strong membership, a membership in surplus of the need for the service in that area, but we need to work with them to ensure that that resource being their lifeguards is able to be used to serve the other areas of Auckland and to supplement that with growing an additional surf lifeguards. What we don't want to do is be building new surf lifesaving towers or surf lifesaving facilities, so we'd have clip-on services, and we don't want to be adding incorporated societies to the membership.
Sure. Just got one other very quick question, and that is my observation and what people tell me is you've got a significant impact of technology. So you've now got motorised surfboards that are coming out, and obviously kite surfers, and some of these things have got foils and they're motorised, highly dangerous. There appears to be a significant escalation in all this. It means that people can go further out a lot quicker and get into trouble. Is this something you're keeping abreast of?
Yeah, that's correct. As we've said in the report, we're having a more complex and multifarious response as people use the coastline in new ways. The other challenge is that in the past, surfers would come to the beach who knew how to surf. Surfboards and similar equipment are now so available and so readily used. There's less stigma about being a learner, that you're having a lot of people come to the beach and learn in what is essentially a dangerous environment without instruction, which either relies on the local surfing community supporting them or Surf Lifesaving providing a response. So we're seeing a complexity in our patrol response. But again, we've been really successful in responding to that space. It becomes more and more challenging, but we continue to decrease the drowning toll, we continue to qualify more lifeguards, and our beaches continue to be safer.
Councillor Casey. Oh, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Matthew, for a very good presentation as usual. My question goes to your comments on the provision of life-saving services, and I think of a number of these clubs now in the northern region which have massive memberships. I mean, huge memberships, in some cases, poor or inadequate facilities to cater for that membership. Is there a correlation between those huge memberships in areas that are growing and a flow on to people wanting to be lifeguards, and therefore the ability perhaps to go to some of these far-flung places like Red Beach does, or is that sort of wishful thinking?
Correct. So you're diving into one of our strategic priorities, which is matching the lifeguard capability to where the need is. And of course, there's going to have to be some negotiation in that, because I think it's far easier for the Maringi Bay lifeguard to patrol at Maringi Bay or the Piha lifeguard to patrol at Piha as it is for them to cross the coast. And of course, there's added cost in that. So we're now reviewing our options in that space. You are right that the membership, especially in the East Coast urban clubs, continues to grow, and some of them are upwards of 700. Orewa sits at 900 and Red Beach sits at 600 with Orewa at 700, so very strong membership. But that membership adds as much burden to the club as they work as volunteers to support such a strong group without the national support you'd see from other organisations such as soccer or rugby from that size. So we look to work with them to manage that growth and to make sure that they use other nearby surf clubs if they can't meet the demands of their community in terms of membership.
Matthew, in your report, you did refer to adversarial leadership in some areas, and I don't want to go there, but we have got 3 surf clubs that...
Region board or the elected governance of that board. In the case of the rebuilds, Carry, I think, portrays some of the challenges we're seeing. They're in a very difficult build environment. Right. They're competing with escalating construction market. Their costs have gone up some, I think, 33% over 2 years. That's just the facts, they've got to live with that. And at the same time, the same individuals who are trying to run the club and patrol a dangerous beach, as Carry being a thin community with not a lot of resource, are trying to do this mammoth task of rebuilding a $4 million surf club with support from Northern Region and Auckland Council. And it's a difficult task. At the same time, it's a competitive funding environment. We have the likes of Marine Rescue Centre Trust trying to be rebuilt at the same time, so we're talking to the same funders. We have funders that fund them operationally who are now being gone to for CAPEX support. And what we've looked to, and where we've been quite vocal in the past, is that the local funding market in Auckland has been tapped out for that. Auckland Council is funding at a maximum. Their support is, I think, monumental, considering when you look at what central government gives, which is nothing, and what other funders give. and we're now really pressing the national body to advance conversations with central government. I think it's criminal that it still hasn't happened at this time, and we put the ultimatum to them last year that if the national body wasn't going to approach central government, we had a very strong case too, and we're now looking to be involved in future budgets, but we just cannot progress that quick enough, I think, to have additional support.
And do you advise certain clubs that where a new surf club is out of control because of escalation costs, that potentially rebuilds on old bones is a good way to go about it and half the price or something like that?
Really good question. Surf Lifesaving Northern Region, through myself as facilitator of the 1020 project, has overall program and project governance, which puts me in the difficult position of managing their aspirations. And they'd love to have buildings with curved glass and $8 million bills, but there's simply not funding for that. So we need to make sure that they're practical builds, that there's uniformity, because all surf clubs in Auckland really should look the same, and that they're able to actually have clubs which they can maintain the OPEX for. And at the same time, they need to have a club that's built for what the club's going to look like in 40 years, not what it looks like today.
Yep.
So it often sometimes puts us at loggerheads, but they're worthwhile conversations.
Right, thank you. Good answer. Councillor Holst, to wrap it up.
Thank you. And I guess from those of us who represent the West, huge thanks as always, and just acknowledging the work that Councillor Cooper's done with you on the rebuild project. My question was actually going to cover off the relationship with central government, because we are tapped out, as you say quite rightly, as a community and as a council, and I agree. I think it is a dereliction of duty that successive governments have not engaged in this discussion. When you look at the rate of rescue in places like Piha and Karikari, this is a life-saving first response. It's not a sports club. And I guess the question had been partially answered, but it's again to offer our support to any endeavours that you may require and support to central government. And again, thank you for the thousands of life-saving rescues.
Thank you. And I think, to be clear to Council, the response on the East Coast is just as much. There's a huge demand for surf lifesaving on both coasts. But we are an emergency service, we are a sports club, and we are a community education arm. We fill multiple roles successfully. Although it has its challenges, we fulfil all those spots.
Right, thank you very much. That's very thorough. And someone could move a vote of thanks to Matthew and the other two organisations, Councillor Watts and Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour? Thank you. None against, obviously. Thank you, Watercare, for turning up at 11:30. We are going to take a 5-minute break. I'm afraid we've been going since 9 o'clock. So.
Mr. Chairman, just before we move on, I'm mindful that this may be the last time that we see Vern Walsh.
I think we're seeing Vern one more time.
Oh, that's right.
As much as we'd like to see him many more times, but I think we're seeing him end of June, I think, yes. All right, thank you.
Did you say 5 minutes?
Sarah to come up and Kevin. And I'm not sure who's coming up. It'll be Catherine and Ravine and as many of the A team as want to come up. I should withdraw that A, B team. The top team. That's what I just said. I withdraw that remark. Right. Welcome, Catherine. Welcome, Ravine. But Sarah, you're going to lead off, I think. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, good morning, afternoon, morning, I think. As you just mentioned, we're here today to, the advice in front of you is around whether to endorse Watercare entering into a commercial arrangement with a Waikato Waters Governance Board, which would be an organisation of Waikato District Council. So you all have some familiarity with this, or should have some familiarity with this through previous governance workshops and information you've received from Watercare about it. The proposal is essentially giving effect to a commitment in Watercare's statement of intent to explore additional revenue sources, which was something that the council as shareholder asked all of its CCOs to do a few years ago, given the circumstances that we're in. So I'll just talk quickly about the decision that you're actually being asked to make and the recommendations you're being asked to agree to, and then obviously we have Catherine and Ravine here who can answer any questions about the proposal itself. So the decision that you're making today is to endorse Watercare entering into the first 2 years of a delegated management agreement for 3 water services in Waikato District, and that would take effect from 1st of July. So the first 2 years is essentially a contracting arrangement, and then the important issue here is that it can, at the end of that 2 years, enter into a longer term arrangement, which would be done on an end-to-end service basis. So Watercare would be potentially taking on a more, integrated role in doing essentially what they do here in Auckland for Waikato District customers. And the arrangement is underpinned by the 3 principles which are included in the recs above, and I'll just briefly touch on those. So the first is that Watercare will not compromise its service to Aucklanders. The second is that there will be no cross-subsidy from Watercare customers in Auckland to Waikato, and if anything, we would hope that it would go the other way. And the third is that, I've forgotten. Watercare has to make an acceptable return, so it's essentially the flip side of that. And during that first 2 years, Watercare will be doing a range of due diligence on the assets themselves and in the arrangement. And as Ravine has just mentioned earlier, that they're not going to know fully what the condition of the assets is, and therefore what the asset management plan will need to look like until they get in there and start managing it. So that's why the contract has been structured in that way. So essentially the recommendations say that before there's a commitment to enter into phase 2, which would probably happen some point during the second year of that initial phase, then Watercare will come back to the governing body or to the Finance Committee with more advice around the financial impacts and the risk and the results of the consultation that they're required to do. And we'll seek a further endorsement from you as the committee. So I think that's all I'll say for now, but obviously we're happy to answer any questions from the sort of Auckland Council staff perspective, and on the proposal, I'm sure Watercare are happy to as well.
Catherine or Ravine, do you wish to do an introduction as well on the project, or?
Only to the extent that I think the report's pretty clear in terms of the phase that we're at. It's the board appreciates the opportunity for the council to actually look at it and endorse the initiative that originally did come out some time ago, seeking for us to find more revenue opportunities, and so no, I think we're happy.
Good. It has come on, because I do remember asking 5 years ago, I think it was Mr Clark was the chair at the time, just to why are you looking at doing something outside Auckland, and he scoffed at me and said it was basically a ridiculous idea.
Things have moved on.
Under the risks on number 45, there is a risk that may be a substantial unforeseen investment required. Watercare has mitigated this risk through the proposed 6-yearly review of the asset management plan. Just to be quite clear to everyone, we are not using Watercare money, therefore affecting our balance sheet or anything, the group balance sheet. That is all Waikato district money that would be into the assets. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
So just to be clear, the intention, Waikato District Council's intention is that they want a long-term arrangement, and they want a joint council arrangement, which under Section 137 of the Local Government Act requires consultation, which we haven't yet done. So their intention is that the revenues that are collected from the customers in Waikato will fund this. But as capital investments go, sometimes the investment has to be made earlier, and so it can affect our balance sheet. So the details haven't yet been agreed, which is why we're doing the 2-year contracting arrangement. So basically what we've said is we understand Waikato District Council's intention to have a long-term arrangement, and we could work with them, but we have to be careful about the risks that we would then take. And what we have proposed, and they have accepted, that we will run their operations for 2 years on contract, which is different from a joint council arrangement. It's a straight contract where they will pay us, and in that time frame, we're going to get more information about the condition of the assets and what they've allowed for in the AMP. There will be discussions, we'll consult, they will need to consult further as well. And out of that exercise, we will conclude. One of the options could be that we run everything under a franchise type of model where it will affect our balance sheet, which is why we will be coming back to council before that decision is made. And this is why in the report we are saying that the impact on the council group will have to be considered. So the answer to your question is, if we go down that path, the answer is yes, and we do need to consult, but not for the first 2 years.
Okay, right. We have a very long list here. We have Councillor Simpson, Casey, Bartley, Councillor Walker, Councillor Holmes, Member Hanare, and the Mayor.
Wow, so I'll be quick. I've got 2 quick questions. One is on consultation. Now, you have to do consultation around this. It's legislative. It's expensive consultation, especially when you've got to do every Aucklander. Is it possible, or are you considering adding your consultation to something we're going to consult on anyway, to sort of share some of those costs?
So the answer will be yes. If the council is consulting and we have a reason to consult and we can align the two, then yes, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's look for a reason, okay? Because that would help everybody, okay? And my second question is just, please give me confirmation that you will give us plenty of time within the 2-year period for which to consider what you're doing. Because, in other words, don't come back 23 months into your 2-year period and say, oh, by the way, in a perfect world, we're looking at least 6 months' notice, aren't we? So we can jointly look at those financial impacts. You see where I'm coming from?
Absolutely. So 2 things. We will be reporting to yourselves as to how this is going through our quarterly reports. But absolutely, the onus on Waikato District Council and on us is to firm up on what the next step is sooner rather than later.
I applaud the 2-year thing, and I'm happy to move or second it, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, we've got you down as a seconder. Councillor Casey.
Thanks, Wayne. I'm interested in the workforce that's coming over to you. Can you tell me how many workers are transferring from Waikato? I'm also interested in their level of unionisation compared to Watercare's level of unionisation and the terms and conditions that are being transferred over with them.
Okay, so my understanding is there's about 30 staff that are coming through. They have the option to decide not to come through. That is something that Waikato District Council is handling with them, and we're working with them. And once they transfer, their conditions will be the same as our conditions. Yeah. So they will become Watercare employees.
I suppose I'm interested in whether that's good or bad for them. Are your conditions better or worse? And that was back to the unionisation. Are you in the same union or not?
Yeah, so they are coming. They'll become Watercare employees. But if they've got conditions that have been grandfathered or grandmothered, then they come across as well. Yeah.
All good. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what does this mean if you start serving a different area that isn't Auckland? Will you have to change your constitution? Because from what I read, your purpose is to serve Auckland.
So we already serve Waikato right now. So we don't have to change our constitution. That makes sense. So already North Waikato, Pokeno, all the growth that's happening there is supplied by Watercare. So we don't do the retail, but it's our water supply and our wastewater services. So Yashili, the milk factory, the Sinlay that's being built, the water that they are using is from Watercare, and the wastewater that they're producing is treated by Watercare.
If I could just add, Councillor, through you, Chair, it will be included in the Statement of Intent. So that will be a description of what the activities are and the scope of it will be included in there, which is approved by you as the shareholder.
And you do other areas around the Franklin and Hanua area in the Waikato, don't you? Yeah, okay. Councillor Walker.
So I've got a few questions. My particular concerns are...
Wayne, can you bring your speaker forward, please? Or, just pull the whole thing forward a bit.
Always like to do things under the direction of the chair. So, can you hear me okay, Raveen? Okay, so I've got a few particular concerns, and they all go to managing the relationship between Auckland and Waikato. So we've got a circumstance where we and Watercare have obviously got a strong drive towards a water strategy and applying different approaches that go to water across Watercare, Healthy Water, Auckland Transport and the like. And those things need to be embedded and not upset by a relationship. Quite obviously, there are concerns around cross subsidies, and as much and all as I've got a concern about this situation, that is the relationship between Auckland and Waikato as it goes to cross subsidies, there's the potential obviously around amalgamation or other things that the government might be considering vis-a-vis Auckland's relationship with north of us, where the issue of cross subsidies would be of extreme concern. A particular lens that I would apply to this is around sustainability, low carbon, the notion that if you are subsidising a very distant area, you might be subsidising impacts that are entirely unsustainable, encouraging development that frankly should not happen. So that goes to how we're consulting, what we're considering in the gambit of issues that we're putting out to people. The other issue that concerns me is, as much and all as we, as Auckland councillors, need to be aware of what's good for us and Auckland, quite obviously, we've got an interest in what's happening in the Waikato. There's the impact on the Hauraki Gulf, and myself and Councillor Watson and others are on the Hauraki Gulf Forum. So there's that aspect. So there are desirable outcomes that we need to know of as Aucklanders in respect of our relationship with Waikato. So it's not just about consulting for Auckland, it's bigger than that. Just coming back to one particular issue, which is around transparency, I think it's critical that Auckland Council and Waikato have a lot of oversight over overhead and how that is applied. And I think this goes to CCOs generally. We need to do more work in that area. And lastly, given that Watercare obviously have a lot of expertise, there's the notion of some form of centre of excellence that you might have within what you are creating here that might be available to other councils in addition. That could be areas way distant to Auckland where there are not issues around perhaps the franchising arrangement that you might consider with Waikato, but are different and might apply to enhancing the performance elsewhere. So I just toss those questions as well.
The last one's a question there.
Sure. So
New Zealand wide.
I think, I'll cover the bits that I glean out of that as questions, in your statements as well. So firstly, there is an initiative underway by government, and Minister Mahuta is currently consulting on the future of the three waters. And therefore, the 2-year transition that we have put in helps us with that, because if a decision is made by central government that there is going to be a different structure for water supply, and Watercare's relationship with Waikato District Council does not fit with that arrangement, then we can terminate and move out. So that gives us some time, hoping that the government will make a decision in the next 2 years. So it gives us some time. With regard to the risks and subsidization that may come if we went north, that would only happen if it's a government-mandated structure. If the government decides that there will be a water entity that includes Watercare serving the north, well, that would be the law, right? And there would be an opportunity for the council to provide its feedback to the government proposal. But if Watercare were moving anywhere else, we're doing Waikato, we would always keep the principles that the council has got. On the matter of broader relationships between council and Waikato District and broader policy statements, well, they remain, So Waikato District Council will have its own planning, its own drivers for what it wants, where it wants growth and where it doesn't want growth. We would just oblige, as we do here with Auckland. The difference will be Auckland is a shareholder and Waikato will be a client. There's a big difference between the two. So we are very wary about our values and what we stand for as Watercare and the expectations from council as to who we are, and the desires for us in terms of the service we provide our customers, how we treat the environment, and our obligations with Maori and iwi. Well, the expectation from Waikato is that they will benefit from that. So I don't think that we will compromise, and it's there. We will not compromise who we are because of Waikato District Council, and I don't expect them to ask us to.
And just from the board's perspective, the board is closely looking at, the commercial arrangements and the transparency and how we will ensure that there is not cross-subsidisation. It's important for our organisation as a whole that when we go into this is beneficial for the organisation, as well as for the Waikato customers, in producing a good outcome as well.
Okay, right, just so you realise you're not being forgotten, I have Councillor Holtz, Member Hanari, the Mayor, Councillor Bartley, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Casey. Councillor Holtz.
Thank you. Really interesting, and it is something that has been signalled for a long time. So my particular question is just in context. I think we've already got a really close relationship with the Waikato, and out of respect to the Waikato region, we receive their water, we use their river, we already owe them, in inverted commas, for the luxury of using their river system. So I think we need to make sure that people don't see this all as a one-way flow. So my question is around flow, and I'm interested in what the backflow device is, because obviously we want to have flow of revenue into Auckland Council, and we want to understand what the backflow device is to stop revenue flow out of Auckland Council into Waikato Regional Council. And I guess that will only become clear, that's what phase 1 is for. The bit that interests me is how we are talking to Minister Mahuta about phase 1 as an opportunity to test drive the Three Waters, the government's Three Waters plan. So that's my first question, is are we in direct discussion? Because it seems to me that that's quite an urgent discussion.
That's a very good question, Councillor. So the government and the minister are aware of this relationship and are watching it closely. I personally think that the council's support and feedback to the minister would be useful, because we've always said that this is council's role with central government, not Watercare's role. So while they are asking us, officers are asking us questions and we give them answers, we are not advocating this as an option instead of, but I would suggest that it is definitely something that Auckland Council, as shareholder, can do.
I think, Mr. Chair, this is probably quite an urgent issue. If we do make this decision today, I think that discussion does need to happen with the minister, because it's the phase 1 is our opportunity to test drive and design that backflow device. The minister, I think, is not supportive of a, in inverted commas, a backflow device being inserted into this process. But we are at the forefront of the government's Three Waters proposal, and we're actually doing it. And ideally, this piece of work is there to test drive and show that we can do it without the cross-subsidy, the interregional cross-subsidy. So I think, Mr. Chair, my question's been answered, and my advocacy is that we pick this up with some urgency with the government to make sure that this is explained as the shareholder in partnership with our CCO, that the story doesn't become owned by someone else, which seems to be what happens. And my last question is, just as we oversee the governance side of this, will the governance complexities be oversighted by the board on behalf of the deliverer, or by the shareholder, i.e. council? So when things are thorny, difficult, complex, or surprises arise, is it simply the Watercare board or the shareholder, or a joint process that will oversee that?
I guess it's a case of it's a test drive, and we'll work it through and see what's most appropriate. Certainly for this first phase, it really is an operations and maintenance contract, but providing for us to do the due diligence on what might come in that next phase, if you like. So I'm struggling to see what the issues might be, but I'm sure we're open to talk with the council and clearly with the Waters Governance Board and whoever is appropriate at the time. Yeah.
I guess, Mr. Chair, I think we need to go into this with positivity and hope, but we know when it comes to water, as soon as anything goes wrong, the issue will land at the mayor's door, as these things always do. When it goes well, no one ever notices. When things turn to the proverbial, it's the mayor who is the person with the microphones under his nose. So because this is a fairly leading edge process, I think we need to be seamless in our governance of this. Thank you. And good work. Having talked to the Waikato Regional Council and some of the politicians at National Council meeting on Friday, they're excited about this, so it's good work.
If I may add to Catherine's comments, I think what will happen is there is a relationship between Waikato District and Auckland Council, and we will sit underneath that relationship. So whether it's during the 2 years or if we enter into a longer term arrangement, if we have an issue that could impact on the relationship between Auckland Council and Waikato, it is only necessary that we inform on a no surprises basis Auckland Council, so that if we need assistance, you can smooth the path for us. Yeah.
Member Hanadi.
Kia ora, Ravine. Just a couple of questions, and I'm supportive of taking this baby for a drive and see how she handles, and one of my concerns though is that I haven't heard anybody say what's in it for Auckland, what's in it for me as a ratepayer. Do I get anything out of the deal? Because sometimes, or most of the times, in fact, all of the times when you do a bit of a business deal, there's got to be something in it for you. It's not just because you're mates with Waikato District Council. It's for no other reason than there's something in it for your organisation. So can you tell me what is in it for you, your organisation, and me as a ratepayer?
Absolutely. So firstly, I think, if we turn the question around and we say the people of Waikato have been saying, well, Aucklanders have come, especially when there was a need for more water, and they said, yes, you can come and take water from the Waikato River because it will benefit all of Auckland. Well, what benefit did Waikato get? And we have a higher level of security of supply in Auckland. There have been droughts where we haven't had any restrictions here, and yet there's been restrictions in Waikato. They're paying more for the services because they don't have scale. They're unable to upgrade and operate their wastewater treatment plants, so that the effluent that is going into the river probably isn't of the standard that they would like it to be. So I would say that we have been taking water from the Waikato catchment for a very long time. The Mangatangi, Mangatawhiri dams, they're tributaries of the Waikato. So it would be very rich if we said, in addition to that, we want more. So we've started with the position that we've already been taking a lot, and they've never asked for anything. What they're asking for right now is to take advantage of the scale we have, because we're big. They're asking to take advantage of the expertise that we have. They're not asking us to subsidize them. So the benefit that Aucklanders will get is that we will get a return of the risk that we are taking. So there is going to be some additional income that we're going to make. We're not saying that there will be no additional income. So while we're not subsidizing Waikato, they are going to give us money that we bring here, but they're going to gain as well. They've already identified that through this relationship, over the next 10 years, they're going to save $28 million, which they wouldn't be able to save if they didn't have this relationship. And what we're saying is, yes, we will help them get that saving, but we will, in addition to that, also get additional funding that we can take. So it's a win-win. Waikato residents win, and we should win. But we will test it in the test drive over the next 2 years.
Thank you, Ravine. You should have been a politician. Lovely how you turned my question around. And I accept that, what you say. The last question, and I suppose it's one that council hasn't put fairly and squarely in front of themselves, and nor has the government, but it's coming. And that is the issue of where Māori stand in terms of the ownership of the resource. And again, I refer back to my first question. I said, what's in it for me? The same could be said for what's in it for Māori. And I know that's most probably not a question that anybody can answer within the next 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 months, 5 years. But I suppose it's not a question; it's a bit of a statement. And there's also another question that I do have, and it is about I suppose the tangible benefits of urban Māori, and I mean apprenticeships, I mean more jobs for our people, especially out in the south. So have we thought of any progressive parts of this contract where, about procurement, for example, not only on our side but also on Waikato Tainui side? Yeah.
Okay, that's a very good question. So the Waikato District Council has set up a water governance board, which has got 3 independent members, and it has representation from Waikato Tainui. In fact, the chair is Waikato Tainui. It's Ruku. So it's a step towards involving Maori in the management of water as far as Waikato District Council is concerned. So we'll be reporting to a client that has got representation from Maori. In terms of jobs, the initiative that we have, the opportunity that we have, is the Central Interceptor. So we are already working, Central Interceptor is a project, we're working with the Southern Initiative. We have identified a number of opportunities because we've got a project that is going to last 5 years. Opportunities for tunnelers, opportunities in every field. So, and it's a large scale, long term. There may be opportunities that come out of the Waikato contract as well, but it doesn't have that scale at the moment. But Central Interceptor, definitely we're working with Southern Initiative on that.
Mayor Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 questions, but preceded by a comment. I think this is going to be a win-win-win. Waikato District wins because they get a cheaper service and better quality. We win because we entrench our position in the Waikato where we need to, but we also get a potential reasonable revenue from it. And the government actually wins because I think they're going to find it much harder than they think to compel the amalgamation of different organisations. This is in Nanaya's back patch, and we can demonstrate that it works. And I think, as Councillor Holt said, that the Local Government New Zealand will look at this as a model. So I think it's a sensible move. I think the paper is a sensible one, but I just want to come to the questions because the nagging concern is that risk that's identified in the paper, that there may be substantial unseen investment required. I have no idea of what state the Waikato District Council's water assets are in. But I'm presuming that even though you haven't gone through your management plan yet, asset management plan, or done full due diligence, you've got a bit of an idea. And the question is, you say in your letter to us of the 16th of April under 3.5 that far from exacerbating our debt to revenue ratio, you think it will have a positive effect. And I really want to explore what you're basing that on.
So and we're still in discussions with Waikato District, but one of the options is that we, in the joint council arrangement, end up billing the customers directly. So that requires over the next 2 years for Waikato District Council to consult its ratepayers, because that wouldn't be a rate, that will be a water charge, which is a contractual charge. But assuming that that's what we do, then all the revenue is going to be our revenue. So it's going to come through our books. So we will have increased revenue, and then whatever the debt is, we'll have increased debt as well. But the numbers that we have done suggest that the debt to revenue ratio is going to get better.
Okay, but that's premised on there not being a massive job that needs to be done to upgrade their assets. And I want to know from you what you know about the state of their assets.
So that is why we're doing this 2-year exercise. So we've done some work, but it is never enough, because most of the assets are underground. We know what condition the treatment plants are, okay? When we had amalgamation and we took over Rodney and Franklin, and we found a lot more than we would have otherwise known. So the 2 years is a very critical period for both parties, for Waikato and for ourselves.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I might not get further on this question, but I still want to. I want to get more. It's quite a bold statement to say that the contract, the 2 years is fine. It's what comes after that, and you have to meet the cost of their capital assets. And so we have got a protection, I accept that. But to make the bold statement that it's expected to improve our debt to revenue ratio, I presume that's over the whole phase, not just the first 2 years. You must have a bit of an impression that you are not going to be faced with a task in rebuilding assets that's so great that the debt would be higher than the revenue that you're expecting to return from it. And I want to know how much due diligence has been done so far. I know not enough. No, you haven't done the full task, but you must have a bit of a sense in order to be able to make the statement you have to us.
Exactly. So based on what we have done, and we have done a fair amount, we believe that that would be the case. But having said that, that's not enough for the board, or you. So we'd be in a better position to answer that question after we've been in there for at least 12 months.
Okay. Just the other two quick questions, Mr. Chair. You say that it'll generate revenue of about 20 million a year to you. What do you think the net, I presume that's over the next 2 years, what do you think the net revenue is rather than the gross revenue?
So when you say net, is that a way of asking us what is our profit margin on that?
I was deliberately avoiding that word.
Yes.
For the sensitivities of Kathy Casey.
Yes. So
net revenue is pretty much the same thing. Yep.
Exactly. So for the first 2 years...
I will remind everyone we're in open session.
Yes. For the first 2 years, what we've said to Waikato, because this is being fair. I mean, they're expecting us to be... fair and open with them. And we said we will be fair and open with the books in the first 2 years so they can see things, because we need to have a fair and open conversation about the realities of the assets, the costs, and all that. So the first 2 years, what will happen is Waikato is collecting the revenue. They're going to deduct the sum of money for the services that they continue to provide themselves, and they will pay us for what we believe is the services we provide. So it is not a question of the balance, because we're not in that stage. There would be more after we get into an arrangement that is beyond. But in the first 2 years, what we're saying is we'll be compensated for the effort we're putting in.
Thank you. The third question is that, as I understand it, under your legislation, you're prohibited from paying a dividend, and you're prohibited from providing water other than at the lowest cost possible. So how does that affect the net revenue, to use that word again, that you are bringing back to Auckland? And I'm presuming that if you're making money out of that, then that will just be the dividend in inverted commas will be delivered in terms of less price rises for Auckland water users, but you might like to clarify that.
You're absolutely right. So this is Councillor Hannare's question. So that's the benefit for Aucklanders. They would pay less because we're getting revenues from elsewhere, surpluses from somewhere else. Yes.
And that's why, but also, but back to your first point, and, you know, in the paper, Sarah and Kevin, and been signed off by Matthew, is clause 45 is signalling that we do see there is potential risk there. So we have Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions have actually been answered already by those that were posed by the Mayor and Councillor Hulse. But might I just observe that this really is a vote of confidence in the excellence of Watercare, in their staff, and also in their board. And I think as we go through, if this is adopted today, the process of evaluation, it's going to be important that we continue to see stability on the board of Watercare, because I think they have grasped quite carefully from the feedback I've heard today in the open agenda, the complexities of moving forward and the opportunities. But I think we really should note the recognition of Watercare in, you know, a small country like New Zealand. To have an outstanding organisation that others want to be part of is something we should be very proud of.
Thank you. Right, we have three people asking a further question, which is Councillor Bartley, Casey and Wayne Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I just wanted to clarify, those parts of the Waikato that we currently serve, was that because those parts were within the Auckland boundary before? Okay. All right. So we were within our constitution when we were servicing those areas. This I see as totally separate and different and outside what the constitution allows. So I'm looking for some guidance of how to get past. The purpose of Watercare is to provide Auckland's integrated water supply and wastewater services.
I'm not a lawyer, but I think that doesn't prohibit us from delivering that as we do now, and also venturing into other areas, you know, that can support our operation. I'm not sure if our
Maybe Rob could come
legal.
up.
Yeah, and maybe I'll fill in the gap while Rob gets up here. I was a lawyer, but I'm no longer bound by a code of ethics, which is quite liberating. Sorry, that was an appropriate way to start my response. Yeah, I'm no longer practicing as a solicitor. But my understanding is the Constitution is empowering. Yes, that is the purpose, to provide water services within the Auckland region, but it doesn't prohibit going above and beyond that. Rob is nodding slightly to my right. But look, if it is of concern, I think the most relevant governance document at play here is the Statement of Intent. And there's already been shareholder feedback given by this committee to Watercare. I think that the final Statement of Intent must reflect any decisions that are made around this deal in the Waikato. If, I guess, there is any uncertainty or lack of clarity in the Constitution, you as the shareholder have the ability to amend that Constitution at any time. So my advice to you would be, whatever the decision is today, first and foremost, get the Statement of Intent to reflect that decision, and then if there's any tidying up that needs to be done in the Constitution, which is a bit more of a mechanical document, we can do that at a later date.
Rob. Just press your button, Rob.
Yeah, I was just saying my learned friend next door should have kept his practicing certificate. Really the three principles, Councillor, mean that Watercare will have to fit within the terms of its constitution of providing the services to Auckland as no detraction from the services, etc. The Local Government Act specifically makes provision for local government organisations to undertake services for other local government organisation. So the Act specifically envisages that happening. And you might have seen just recently with the problems that Martinborough have experienced, that Wellington Water have now extended their services to look after Martinborough, and they won't have had to change any constitution to do that. So, in short, we'll still be living with the terms of our constitution as it relates to Aucklanders, but that doesn't stop us undertaking services outside of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I just want to talk about political risk entering into this new relationship. And can you just confirm, you've made the decision, we're just endorsing the decision made by the Watercare Board?
No, the final decision actually comes to our board meeting next week.
But it's the board that makes the decision, and we're endorsing that today.
Yeah.
Right. Alan Sanson, the mayor of Waikato District, has made some pronouncements in the media about the future of water services in New Zealand, and that's my worry, right? We have our view, and we're very clear that this is not a precursor to taking over Northland, Wellington, the North Island, the South Island, and the whole of New Zealand. It's not that. And yet Mr. Sampson has said that he says that this is a template, really, a mega deal template for the future, where water services might be delivered by one service provider in the North Island and one in the South Island. So just to be clear, that is that going to stop those kind of pronouncements, because we'll now be in a deal, and we'll now be in a kind of partnership, and it wouldn't be right if I hear that from the mayor at the other end of the deal. So how are we managing the political relationship? Maybe it's a question for the mayor, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say that is exactly what I was trying to say earlier when Councillor Hulse was speaking. Because I think this is a bigger picture relationship between councils, and we are just helping Waikato, and we're not going to get involved in the politics. That's for council. Yeah. That's what you're good at. We're good at what we're doing. So.
And I'm certainly not in a position to control or take responsibility for what another mayor says. They have to be accountable for those comments. What we decide here, if we endorse this proposal, is what we want to do and how we want to do it. And actually, I guess in the final instance, it is a decision of the governing body, because we determine your strategic direction. I think most of us have come to the point where we think this is sensible, but we're not looking beyond this at some mega proposal that would see Watercare become Watercare New Zealand rather than Watercare Auckland. Watercare is part of the Auckland Council group, and we're something, I said before, this was a win-win-win. I think we're to do it for each of those wins. But, you know, if we get another proposal, say, from Northland, you know, we would want to look really carefully at whether the principles that we've established under B can be maintained if we were to go beyond Waikato District.
Just to reiterate, there's no hidden agenda here. This is a one-off, good neighbourly piece of business that's good for everybody. Win-win. It's not the precursor to any mega deal for anywhere else.
No, the board has no grand plan, you know, all behind this. This is simply an opportunity that has arisen over many years. I mean, it started a long time ago with Hamilton and Waikato District and those communities trying to sort out amongst themselves how they could improve their water service delivery. It's evolved over time to get to this situation. It was not something that Watercare Board has in its back pocket as a big strategic agenda.
And I emphasise, as I said at the start, Councillor Casey, when I mentioned it 5 years ago, I got this, a pretty abrupt dismissal by the chair of the board as that was a ridiculous idea. So I don't think there's any grand plan that's been evolving over a long time. Right, I have Councillor Walker, Councillor Darby, and Councillor Bartley wants another question. So that's it. We're going to call it quits after that. So Councillor Walker.
So I've just got a question around. It goes to the items that we're moving. You know, resolutions around due diligence, and I notice an outstanding emphasis on the finance, but I don't see any mention of assessing the environmental sustainability, resilience, social and cultural impacts. Would they be desirable things to add?
Well, as I said earlier, Councillor, we're going to practice what we practice here in Auckland. That's what we're saying. And that we will not compromise that. But we can't turn around and say to Waikato District Council what its position on sustainability should be or shouldn't be. So we're drawing a fine line here. You know, we are not telling them what to do, but at the same time, we're not going to compromise. We're not going to do things in Waikato differently from what we're doing in Auckland, because then there's no benefits. We want to do things exactly the same way.
Yep.
So what I'm really saying is, you know, whatever you see Watercare doing, whatever you as a council have asked Watercare, what our values should be and how we should behave is exactly how we're going to behave in Waikato.
I understand that. My question is that there are other impacts that go to our council and equally to Waikato, aside from the financial ones that are mentioned here. And is it desirable to bolt those on so we give recognition to them? Because from my perspective, the issues around resilience, environment and sustainability are as important, if not more important, than the financial impacts.
I think, through the chair, if I could pick this up, I think Ravine hit the nail on the head earlier when he differentiated between the relationship between Auckland Council as a shareholder and Watercare as Waikato District Council as a client. And I think it's inappropriate of Watercare to be trying to influence the strategic direction as a client of what they're doing. It's stepping into their jurisdiction as a council to set their strategic direction and do their planning. So I think in this instance, Watercare is merely the provider of the service.
Let me be clear, I'm talking about Auckland. So yes, there are going to be financial impacts, but equally there are issues that go to resilience, environment, sustainability, social and cultural that go to this relationship here. They're not mentioned. I'm just flagging them because I'm interested in certainty that those things are considered in what you consult on and what you're putting up.
Yes, so I think it's worth just noting the first principle under Resolution B. So Watercare won't compromise its obligations in service to Aucklanders. So if the council as shareholder has certain baselines or objectives that it wants Watercare to meet around those issues that you've just raised, then that is, we can hold them to that. It's
The other question I'd ask just very quickly is there the possibility of consideration of some other financial structure? So, for example, you could have a limited company that Watercare might have an association with around Waikato's water assets, so that we don't have this circumstance where there's a merger, if I call it that, given that it is quite a distinctly separate operation geographically and in terms of its assets and its customer base.
So that's a very good question, and I think that is something we will be looking at. The board has suggested that we look at how we minimise risks and how we structure things. So that's part of the conversation over the next 2 years before we come back to the council.
Yep. In 18 months' time, we will be coming back with that. All right, Councillor Darby.
Just a comment. Have you finished questions?
Well, Councillor Bartley, do you have another question? Yeah, well, if you could go ahead then, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, you know, what happens, because I'm looking at point 45 about the substantial unforeseen investment. I'm looking at how this commercial arrangement is for up to 32 years, and that the way you're proposing to mitigate that risk is a 6-yearly review. So what if we find something really bad in that 6-yearly review? We're tied, aren't we? Is there any way that can be picked up in the first 2 years or?
So that's again a very good question around risk. So we haven't finalised our contract. We're still talking to Waikato District right now about what happens beyond 2 years. And this is one of the, it's a risk-reward conversation. You know, if If Waikato District wants to put more of the risk on water care, then our expectation of the reward, risk reward, has to be higher. If they want to water care not to be having huge surpluses, then the risks need to be lower. So this is part of the conversation. One way around that is to say, well, in the 2 years we are going to look at the assets, but that may not be enough. But it's not just the asset condition, it's also their planning. So Waikato, what happens to their plans, their growth plans? What happens to legislation, drinking water standards, environmental standards? There could be other drivers that add cost, and there needs to be an opportunity for Watercare to have a conversation with Waikato to say, this isn't something we had anticipated, and therefore we shouldn't be held to the price or whatever we had agreed. But that is part of what we need to agree is during the 2-year phase.
Okay, because I find this worrying, but I hear people say it's a win-win. I heard you say we should win. So that makes me worry.
Yes. If I said it is definitely a win-win, then Waikato District Council would be very worried.
I think through the chair, look, from a staff perspective, and our advice to you today is this is very much an agreement in principle. I was speaking with Ravine beforehand. It's a bit like when you're renovating the house. It's not until you pull the jib off the walls and you see what's behind it that you truly get an appreciation of what you might be in for. We are asking you today as staff to agree in principle to this arrangement to allow Watercare, up 2 years to have as good a look as they can at the assets, and before they commit to that longer term arrangement, come back to you and say, this is what the assets look like, this is what we think the asset management plan will look like, the expected revenues would be this, and there would be a further discussion about where those risks, as Ravine says, where does the risk and reward sit? And at that time, that's when you'll have to make the decision about that sort of next 30 odd years. But the decision today is to set some parameters around that first 2 years, so there's no cross-subsidisation and that Auckland customers aren't impacted, but to allow Watercare the time to do the thorough due diligence so that before we enter into the next 30 odd years, there's a completed picture as possible. And that contract may still have break provisions or further review clauses. We don't know yet. That hasn't been finalised.
Right, councillors, we're down to 2 people that wish to make comment. I think this is going to go through, so I don't know how many comments we need. So Councillor Darby and Councillor Watson.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just want to make a brief comment because it's been an interesting inquiry about this here today, and it's been very constructive. And I want to take my hat off to Waikato District Council for actually asking the question, how could we better provide our water services to our people? And I'm sure they've got people top of mind. And then I want to acknowledge the Watercare Board and Executive for answering that question and deepening that inquiry with Waikato. And then I'm sort of thinking, sitting here, pondering that we're coming up 10 years of the new council reorganisation. And I don't believe we would have got to this level of engagement with Waikato and this offer on the table unless there had been a reorganisation. And it's this scale that actually allows Auckland to start contributing back to the nation. In this case, it's contributing to Waikato. So I think this is a reflection of this 10-year structure that we've been experiencing. And I think going forward, there's a lot more opportunity. We often, for the city, an international city like ours, the big city in New Zealand, to contribute more like this. It could be in transport, it could be in environmental areas, it could be in many, many areas where we have deepened our knowledge because of the scale and investment that you get out of scale. I don't look at this as getting something back out of Waikato. I actually think that a city like ours does need to contribute to the balance of the country. I'm not looking for much more than, eventually, when we go through the first stage, making sure that we aren't subsidising, there's no hint of that, and that there's a modest recovery. I do not expect some big, plus 5% or in a low inflation environment, let alone a so-called commercial return. That's not what I'm expecting. I don't expect there will be any hint of price gouging, and I think we can assure Waikato there will be absolutely no price gouging. They will be good winners out of this as well. They will get the efficiencies in the water delivery. But going forward, I can't help but think how paltry our contribution is to our GDP at 37% for 35% of the population. We've actually got to look at how Auckland contributes on a number of fronts to support the balance of New Zealand, and this is just one small example. And going forward, I think it would be a really good study for this council, for the new council, to look at other opportunities where it can contribute to the nation. The days of going to Wellington cap in hand, asking for something and not fully explaining ultimately where we are going to land as a city as a major contributor back to the balance of the nation, it's all wrong. We've got it all wrong. We've got to demonstrate that we are contributors to the nation, and therefore the capital will deliver such returns. Thanks, Chair.
So, Ravine, you're the spearhead to break down north of the Bombay Hills prejudice. This could be the thing to do it. Right, wrapping it up, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Just a couple of very quick comments to echo some of the observations made by the previous speaker. In the first instance, this is just a 2-year phase that will really just carry out due diligence, so we can take a degree of reassurance from that. And really, for me, I don't have to really go too far beyond the very emphatic guarantees given in point B there. Water Care Services will ensure its obligations and service are not compromised. There will be no cross-subsidy, and Water Care must make an acceptable return. So those verbs are very definitive and don't leave much room for manoeuvre, so I rest very much reassured by that. And I also like the notion of there's a little bit of a quid pro quo here, as Councillor Darby referred to, and that's good. It's a bit like the secondary schools all competing against each other. We're in the one country, we should be cooperating and helping out, so that's good to see. And finally, I'm much reassured by what I observe of Water Care's management of projects in my ward, where we hear this very unusual term, on time and under budget. And that's what we experienced with the Whangaprae Outfall project, which was superbly managed and delivered. No use of any contingency fund, I might add. So that sort of performance on a pretty regular basis usually leaves me supporting whatever Water Care come asking for. So thank you.
Right, thank you, Water Care, Catherine and Ravine, and backup staff, Rob and others. We've got the resolution in front of councillors. I'm going to put them, moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Right, well, unanimous. And we wait for the report in 18 months' time. Yeah. Right, councillors, I'm going to move the information report and seconded by Councillor Walker. Any discussion? I'm going to put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? No consideration of extraordinary items. I now declare the meeting open. Closed. There is lunch. There is lunch. Thank you.